and talking about this thing called stress management. And that was like unheard of in the early 70s. What is stress management? That I was very interested in breathing techniques. And so I ended up getting a doctorate in clinical psychology and was very, very disillusioned by the psychology or the thinking at the time, which was very Freudian, but it was all based on what's wrong with you, not what's right with you. And I thought I was a terrible psychologist because I would hear my colleagues talk, oh, look at that. He's just a raging bipolar or a major depressive. And I was thinking, well, he's got he's got a good sense of humor and creative. And I was looking at strengths and thinking, I'm just a terrible diagnostician and I'll never make it as a psychologist. But I ended up focusing on positive psychology and found that I could help people in very few sessions by just teaching them some breathing, some relaxation techniques, combined with helping them with what was, I would call, their nutty thinking, their irrational thinking. And I was fortunate to train with Dr. Albert Ellis, who is one of the fathers of cognitive behavior therapy, which is the idea that your thoughts are irrational, they're doing you in, but you could change them because you're able to think, and you can modify those statements so that they are more realistic. And as a result, you are changing, and what we now know from functional medicine, even at a cellular level. And so what I did is I took all of those the way I was practicing. I was using cognitive behavior therapy, positive psychology, which is the study of what is right with you, not what's wrong with you, combining that with this mind-body medicine. I was doing biofeedback. I was getting all these referrals, people with things like migraine headaches or anxiety disorders. And then people were coming to me and said, well, you should teach this to health coaches. And so then we started a program to train health coaches in collaboration with IFM, Institute for Functional Medicine. And that was about 10 years ago. That's now my passion and my mission and purpose.
Oh, I had no idea that background. So you've watched so much unfold over the past few decades with children, I'm sure. I mean, it's been really hard for me even, I'm 50 and I remember when there was maybe one or two special needs kids in the class. There was rarely an autistic child in the class. And if they were autistic, we never labeled them as such. They were Asperger, or they were actually all geniuses. They just were needing a little bit different technique and strategy for learning, and there was like one kid that was struggling with obesity, and usually it was clearly like, there was a glandular problem, they used to, call it. And it's been so wild to watch it morph over time right in front of my eyes, and to have so few people acknowledge it. And then also even the parents. I mean, I remember I grew up in Southern California, so I'm guessing the parental group there was just a more fit group because they were outside more often. They were in the sun more often. But even in Oregon, when we moved here, I was in 8th grade, and just the parents back then still were in quite good shape overall, like they were fairly healthy. Maybe someone's dad drank too much or smoked too much, but everybody was like good body composition, pretty strong, pretty active. And it's not that way anymore at all. It's very much changed. And so you've probably been having a bird's eye view of it, just with at least not so much now, but like your background going through the last few decades.
Oh, I've seen it in this was the late 70s. And one of the things that I did, I was coordinating clinical experiences. These were master's level students who were doing their practicum in special education. And I would place them, and then I would go out to the facilities and supervise. And so this was in the northern suburbs of Chicago. And Lake County, which is the county that goes from that suburban area all the way up to the Wisconsin border, for kids who were diagnosed with autism, there was one classroom. There were literally under 10 kids in the entire Lake County. They had a special school that housed them and hearing impaired. And so they were considered like so out of the mainstream. These were not kids with learning disabilities, which is more common. And back then ADD hadn't even come into being at that time. Right. It did a few years later. I actually ran a clinic for ADD, and I did a controlled study using neurofeedback. We compared it to Ritalin and got great results. But kids with autism, this was this was something was rare. You did not see this.